Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles
from Mellow amps, and let's get the big filter caps onto the board and see if we have time to even put the large power resistors on as well. So caution everyone, electrolytic capacitors must be installed with the correct polarity, or there's a hazard of a possible explosion, fire, and death. So pay attention. So these are big capacitors, 1000 microfarad, 250 volts. We need that much capacitance to create a dead silent power supply, and we'll be talking about the power supply in more detail after we've got a good chunk of the build done. So we've got the negative band. We talked about this before. There's almost never a positive marking on the cap. And the idea of manufacturers is, what's the most important thing with electrolytics? Well, it's to get the negative lined up with the negative. So on the board you can see we've got a silk screen showing the negative side. And of course the other side becomes the positive. And we've actually marked the caps with a red dot to show the positive side. So if you've got the S2 build stands, you should have them on the negative side, and that will get you the right height for the capacitors. We're just going to do one at a time. On our lab benches we move a lot quicker and we do 3 at a time, but just hang on to it, flip it over.
Now these are called a snap-in type capacitor, and so they have a slight angle to the ends of their leads, and sometimes they can get a little bit bent out of shape, and you might have trouble fitting them in.
Yeah.
If you do, just come in with a set of pliers and make a small adjustment to the one that's a bit off.
Yeah, or just take
a very small adjustment.
Yeah, usually they're off, you know, like a 0.5 millimeter. So
just compare it to the other caps and give it a little tiny tweak, and then check and see if it fits.
Okay, so let's get our soldering iron on for the day. We're just starting up. It's still morning here, and we're going to want a little bit of flux, not a lot, just the tiniest little bit. I'm going to bring my iron up to 375 C, which is 700 Fahrenheit, and we'll see how that does. Now this is really important. Not only do you have to get the alignment right, but you have to make sure the capacitor is sitting tight, and it is. Now if it wasn't, it's probably because your bench is not perfectly flat, in which case just fold up a scrap piece of paper until you get the right height and it gets the capacitor up tight. So I'm checking to see if there's any wiggle room underneath, and we are tight, so we're good. You can also pull a build stand off and move it around until you get a good solid fit. So
since these are capacitors, you want to be careful that you don't put too much heat on it for too long, but it is a little bit of a larger lead and pad, so you will need a little bit more than something like the smaller caps we did before.
So I'm just starting a little bit of solder to see if it'll help the flow and get it going, and now we're flowing really nicely. I'm going to hold for a full second and I'm off. Now because I want a good tight fit, I'm actually using my finger to hold the board down a little bit, and I'm going to come in over here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a little bit of solder in, and now I'm filling because it's flowing really nicely. I'm going to hold for a second. I'm going to hold and just let it cool for a second. It's actually going to be a couple of seconds. Okay, let's have a look at that one and see how we did. So right away I'm checking the band, and it matches the silk screen band, and it's on nice and tight. That's what you want. Okay, well done. So let's get the next 2 on this side, and we'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so I've got the first 2 on. I'm going to show you what I did on the third one. I actually pulled the build stand off because I want to make sure that I can get as tight to the board as I can. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to actually press down with the iron and with my finger. I'm going to hold. Careful, your finger is going to be pretty close to the heat. So as soon as that cools, I'm going to come in on the last one here.
Yeah, especially be careful holding down on the ground plane, because you have ground plane here and ground plane here, and any of those will burn you with that amount of heat.
And we're just filling in, and I'm just holding until it cools. Okay, well done everyone. Let's get the other side of the board done and we'll see you back. Okay, so we're on the other side. So we've got the three caps on the other side are identical because it's a quasi-dual mono power supply. So one channel has one set of filters and the other channel has another set of filters. So notice how I pulled out the build stand on this corner. It just makes everything work better, and because I've got the caps here, I don't need a build stand here. So I've just got the two build stands here. Is that confusing?
I hope not.
Anyways, you'll figure it out. I love the build stands. They just make the work go so much easier. I can't believe how many years I worked without one. Or without a set. So I'm just going to hold. Let it cool. When you put a fair amount of heat and a fair amount of solder, it actually takes a little while for it to set or to cool down and solidify.
And as usual, be very careful when you install these caps that they're going in the right direction. They're incredibly difficult to desolder once you have them in.
Oh yeah, once they're on the board, they're on the board. There's a method to get them off, but it's a lot of work and it's tricky.
Yeah, I consider myself to be very good at desoldering, and these I have maybe a 50% success rate with.
Yeah. So, okay, so you got two more to do, and we'll see you back. Okay, well let's just back out a little bit. So that's what the capacitors look like. This is the front of the board where the Charles's MTA gold label is. So this is the rear. So all the white bands are all facing the rear. And you may have noticed that I've actually, I don't have one I can show you, but I've marked on the white band, I've marked the actual testing capacitance. And you might notice that it's actually quite a bit lower than 1000 microfarad. Electrolytics, even high quality Nishikon electrolytics, are typically plus or minus 20%.
And almost always on the minus.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good the capacitor is, electrolytics, essentially the rating is basically always overstated. So as a designer, if we needed, let's say we really had to have 1000 microfarad, we probably would be buying at the top end. So we'd probably, if a capacitor was made at 1200 microfarads, we would be buying that. As it turns out, we don't need a full 1000 microfarads for the filter circuit to work properly. So somewhere in the high 800 microfarads, this cap is testing 888, so that's just fine. Now what I did do though, because this is important, is I matched all the filter capacitors, and we're going to put on the corresponding resistor, the power resistors, in just a moment. So let's get organized for that.